listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Hello there, IELTS students. In this tutorial, we are looking at Part 3 Model Answers. Now, I will give you my model answer. As you know, I am a native English speaker. I'm originally from Yorkshire. I usually say Manchester because it's more recognizable thanks to Manchester United, nowadays Manchester City, and so on and so forth. But I will be giving you my answers here, and these are not just based on the fact that I'm a native English speaker, but also of my years of preparing students. When I finished my university, I went to Spain. I started teaching IELTS, and first of all, I started teaching just random students, and then I quickly specialized into IELTS because that's where I could measure my results. And this is where I could, see what's working, see what's not working, just to become a better, more effective tutor. Because I think there's only like 3 industries in the world where they say that you cannot be responsible for your results. It's like agriculture, medicine, and teaching. And this is considered a general fact because you don't have full control of the outcome, whereas in other industries, maybe carpentry, maybe marketing, maybe, construction, you have full control of the output, of the results. And it's said in medicine, agriculture, and teaching, you don't have responsibility. And I disagree. I take full responsibility. This is why I developed the Jump to Band 7 or its free course. I think it's a cop-out when teachers say they don't have the responsibility or I can't learn English for you. I know there's some truth in that, but I think we've become much more powerful tutors and possibly even students if we take responsibility for the outcome. So anyway, as you know, I developed this podcast. When I started teaching IELTS, I started reaching out to experts to get the best advice. Then I eventually started recording this advice. And I still reach out to experts to get more advice, to improve my learning skills, to improve my teaching skills. And all the good advice gets put into my online IELTS course. All the bad advice gets thrown out. and that's how we do it at IELTS Podcast. So without further ado, let's jump into the speaking cue cards. No, we're not doing cue cards. We're doing Part 3 sample answers. So these questions have been found online, and we are going to they've been found online and by students who sent in the exam experience. So let's have a look. First one, let's talk about photography. What are the advantages of taking photos with smartphones? This is a very topical question. But I could start like that. This is more like talking to you guys. Let's do it again. What are the advantages of taking photos with smartphones? I guess this is kind of a topical question. And obviously, compared to traditional cameras, you can take as many as you want. Secondly, you can add filters. I heard of a site called Instagram Reality, or it might be a subreddit, where it shows a picture of a person without the filter and then a picture with the filter. And it's rather shocking sometimes, the differences. And I guess the final advantage is that you've got the ability to take a picture whenever you've got your phone with you, which is practically all the time nowadays. So I guess there's a lot of advantages. And just one last thing. I know that in Japan, by law, the phone has to either have a light on, a flashing light, or make a sound when you're taking a picture, just to avoid, just to make sure that the person you're taking a picture of is aware. So I thought that's quite interesting. So anyway, the advantages are numerous. There we go. So I did kind of go on a bit there. I did add a list, which is always useful. Always. And this is such an easy question that it's easy to develop the list and then, to make the list and then develop one of the answers. And developing the answers, just like we do with task 2, writing task 2, is a key component. Next one. Do you think photographers are artists? Some are definitely artists, but I think the vast majority are not. I'm saying the vast majority because now everybody has become an artist, has become a photographer. However, I think the actual professional photographers, I'd say obviously the vast majority of those are artists, and occasionally common people like myself will take a great photo, but it's more by chance rather than skill. But to answer your question, I guess they are artists, just not in the traditional sense of having to paint or draw or sculpt or even sing. But all the same, it's just a modern form of art. So then again, I managed to squeeze in a list talking about traditional artists, the sculptures, the painters and whatnot. Also, I kind of gave a broad answer there and a little personal anecdote about, I'm not an artist, but occasionally I have taken a pretty good photo. So don't be afraid of adding those personal anecdotes. It just helps you improve the vocabulary in your answer. Next one. What are the benefits of children learning to paint? I assume, I'm not a psychologist or an educational expert, so I'm only guessing or deducing these advantages or benefits, but I would say perhaps they can develop their creativity, perhaps they can express themselves, and most importantly, I guess they could discover if they've got a natural talent for painting. If they never learn to paint, then if they're never given that option, they could never discover if there is any natural talent or if they have any natural talent. So I guess the benefits are numerous, and I guess it all starts with at least having the class or the opportunity to develop these skills. For example, my cousin had a very, very kind of like physical education when she was being brought up. And this happened with all the kids in that family, actually. They're like canoeing, running, sailing. And none of them, I don't think any of them, have ever been given the opportunity to develop their creative side. And maybe we missed a Da Vinci or a Leonardo. I don't know. So I guess there's lots of benefits, and just giving the children the opportunity is more important than other factors. So there we go. I gave the benefits. I couldn't really develop that answer that much, so I quickly threw in an example about my cousin, which was like 30% true. But as I've said in past episodes, we're getting tested on our language skills, not our intelligence skills, not on our, child education skills. It's all about the language. So add the example, add the anecdote, develop it a little bit, and then summarize. Next question. Can anyone become a famous artist through hard work? I guess traditionally this was the viewpoint. And that the skill would shine through. But I think nowadays you definitely need to have this kind of like publicity factor. Just the other day, I was watching a documentary about Pablo Picasso, the famous Spanish artist, and he seemed to be, 70% artist, 30% promoter. And I'm assuming that throughout time, the really skilled artists that never really developed their promotional side probably fell by the wayside, i.e. they never got discovered. So to answer your question, can anyone become a famous artist through hard work? I don't really think so. I think they would have to adopt some elements of promotion, otherwise they will never get discovered. So yeah, it's a sorry and hard fact of the modern world, but I think this is the reality nowadays. There we go. So I gave an example about Pablo Picasso. How did I know about Pablo Picasso being a 30% a promoter? Well, just the other week I was watching a documentary about a couple of years ago. I just went through a phase of watching YouTube documentaries of famous artists. Unfortunately, it's paid off for this answer. So it just goes to show, increase the amount of input going into your head, fill it up with ideas, with topics, with knowledge, and it makes these kinds of questions much easier. So again, that was, if I say so myself, it was a rather realistic answer. But again, I could have easily said that yes, they can, because if the work is truly skilled, then people are going to talk about it and it will get a natural promotion. That's also a correct answer. I just have to develop it like I developed my other answer. What's included? What's necessary to develop an answer? Examples, hypothetical examples, anecdotes. It doesn't really matter. This is not an art exam in this case. It's a language exam. So just remember to give reasons, develop those reasons, use vocabulary and add the examples, and it just makes it so much easier. Next one. Traveling by planes. All right, we're going to be talking about traveling by plane. So imagine we've already had a cue card about traveling, probably traveling by plane. And now the examiner is going to ask us more questions. This is what separates the band 7s and the 8s and the 9s. How far can you go with these questions without repeating your vocabulary or repeating your ideas? Remember, abstract questions, and we're looking at the same topic from different viewpoints, from different perspectives, and we basically want to show the examiners that we can talk about it from all these different angles, viewpoints and time frames, and show the examiner we're band 7 or above. Let's go. What are the advantages of traveling by plane? Well, obviously I think you get there faster, you can go further, and also, I think this is just a small advantage, but I think it's exciting, especially the first time. I remember once on our first flight, my family, we went to Florida. We flew from Manchester to Florida, and as soon as the doors opened, as soon as we came out of the plane, when we landed in Florida, it was just an overwhelming heat. It was incredible. And I asked my dad, I was like, is that the jet engines? And he was like, yeah, this is the jet engines. But then when we got off the plane and we were walking towards the airport, it was still that hot. And we quickly realized that it was the roaring heat and humidity of Florida. So to answer your question, the advantages of traveling by plane is that it can take you to insane locations. It can take you out of your normal environment, and I think this is healthy, not only mentally but physically. So there's plenty of advantages. Again, probably I went a little bit off topic there, but I was just itching to tell that story. But it's a true story, by the way, and I rescued it. I rescued it by bringing it back to saying, I guess that's one of the advantages, is that it takes you out of your normal environment. So don't be afraid of adding these anecdotes, adding these personal stories. Just make sure that they're relevant, and if they're not relevant, just add a little sentence as to why. Because if I hadn't have added that sentence about if I had not explained why I was talking about Florida, it might seem a little bit weird. But I said, so one of the advantages are that it takes you out of your normal environment and gets you to experience new countries, cultures, languages, food, and so on and so forth. Why do some people prefer to travel by train? I assume some people prefer train because, let's see, I guess you can study instead of actually having to drive yourself. Also, I am guessing it's smoother than, for example, a ferry or a car ride. Personally, I actually prefer train travel because, you know, you can get up, you can walk about, you can take out your laptop, you've got a table, and it's usually rather quiet. There's oftentimes a bar or a restaurant in the train as well. And I find it actually quite exciting. On a bus or in a car, you don't really get those benefits, and I don't really find it as productive. I remember once when I was working in an academy in Spain, and the academy owner came up from Murcia to Valencia, and he was quite wealthy, and he came up by train, and I was asking, I was like, why did you come by train? Why didn't you just drive, which is the common thing? And it was like, and he basically said, well, I can study, I can read, I can get up, I can move around. He basically said what I just said, and I thought it's surprising, but after thinking about it and after experiencing it, I can see why some people prefer to travel by train. Okay, so I was going a bit off topic there. Maybe I forced that anecdote, but I quickly rescued it again, and I sort of said, so I guess I can see why some people prefer to travel by train. Just signaling to the examiner that I had finished my answer. Next question. What are the disadvantages of living near an airport? I've never actually lived near an airport, but I'm pretty confident I know all the drawbacks. For one, you get all the noise, and I assume this is the biggest reasons why people object to having airports being built or expanded, because I think it devalues the property if you're constantly having roaring jets over the above your house. Maybe it's unsafer as well. Obviously, living near an airport, you've got a higher chance of a plane crashing. Also, I think there's probably greater air pollution. And let's not forget that airports not only move passengers, but they also move a lot of cargo, which means that there's probably going to be some big motorways and logistics around the airport, which might also negatively impact the quality of your life. For example, if you live next to a motorway, it's not as pleasant, obviously, as living next to green fields. So the disadvantages are rather considerable, and I guess this is why property near airports is usually cheaper than other areas. Yeah, so I went on a lot in my previous answer, so this one I tried to keep it a little bit shorter, and I honestly didn't have that much else to say about it, and I honestly thought all my answers were quite on topic, and I developed a few with an example from my own experience. I mean, I'd never lived near Manchester Airport, for example, but I do know that when I've been there, I've seen the massive motorways, and when you're taking off from Manchester, you can see all the warehouses, all the car parks, all the infrastructure around Manchester Airport. And then once you leave that, when you stop seeing, as the plane continues into the sky, you go through that big, thick lump of grey clouds that's always around Manchester, and then it's blue skies. So anyway, use your personal experience, and as I said before, prepare for these questions. Fill your head with ideas. Write down the vocabulary. Remember your anecdotes. Remember your personal experiences. And you'll be right. Next one. How is working at an airport different from working in other places? I'm guessing that when you work at an airport, I assume you've got a lot of security concerns. Like you might have to get more x-ray scans, so it might be damaging to your health. I guess you've got a lot of health dangers, especially nowadays with corona. I think some of the people most at risk are probably those working at an airport. For example, if a flight has just come in from a country that is highly infected and you're having to deal with these people, obviously you're at a greater risk than somebody who works in a forest, for example. So just to summarize, I guess it's possibly an unhealthier working environment, but it could be more interesting as well, because you get to see more people from different cultures, from different countries. So I guess it is quite a unique job, but personally, I'm happy. I'm more than happy being a professional IELTS tutor, getting students to band 7 or higher. Now, obviously I wouldn't say that in the exam, but I would definitely mention my personal preference. In that question, I kind of looked at both the disadvantages and the advantages very briefly, then I chose my personal one. Again, very similar to a task 2 essay, but obviously my language is more relaxed, it's more spontaneous, it's more suited, and I'm not developing it in as much detail as I would a task 2 essay. Final section or final topic for this tutorial. Let's talk about friends and friendship. Do you think it's strange to make friends online? I think traditionally it was, especially when the internet first came out. You were considered a bit of a weirdo by having friends online. In fact, at college we used to ridicule a mutual friend who was always going to faraway places, what seemed like faraway places like Birmingham or Leeds or wherever, just to meet friends that he had met online. But I guess nowadays it's much more widely accepted. I assume one of the reasons is because it's easier to meet friends with similar hobbies. Like just the other day I was reading a book that said, that was it, it's called collectives of people. So if you are a Pokemon enthusiast 30 years ago, assuming Pokemon existed, you only had the people in your village to make friends with, possibly in your town if they organized events. But nowadays with the internet, it's much easier to find people who love Pokemon. So I guess in the past it was seen as a little bit weird, but nowadays it's so common that it's started to move into the mainstream. So again, I remembered a book that talked about the power of collectives. That's it. I only read it a few months ago, but again, it just goes back to filling your head up with ideas. And again, I remember we had a friend, Jim, who's considered a bit of a weirdo. He used to go to these towns, to different cities, which back then it seemed like a long way away. And we used to think it was very weird, and we used to tease him about it. And he always used to go and meet female friends. I didn't think that was appropriate for my answer, so I left it out. So yeah, remember, even though we can lie and we can tell the truth, sometimes we don't have to tell the whole truth, all right? We can filter it a little bit because this is an IELTS exam and we're wanting to pass the exam. We're not wanting to make friends, ironically. Okay, next question. Why do some people have few friends? I think maybe if people have a few friends just because they possibly don't put in any effort. I know personally, because I move around a lot. I've lived in Spain, I've lived in Poland, I've lived in Ukraine, and I know that unless I put in effort, I won't have that many people to socialize with. And I think also if people have a 9 till 5 and they're moving around, it takes a lot of time and effort, which simply they don't have because maybe they finish tired. They're exhausted and they don't have that much time left in the day. And I think it's just easier just to crash on the couch and watch Netflix. Maybe just scroll down on Facebook or whatever. But I think nowadays, to answer the question, nowadays people have less friends than normal, or possibly traditionally, because maybe they're moving around, maybe they're exhausted from work, or maybe they just don't have enough time to make new friends. So yeah, gave a few different examples, a few different reasons, and a personal anecdote again as well. So it's quite a straightforward structure, and I think it just comes from maybe making a quick plan before in your mind and thinking about what you're going to say. Next question. Which is more important, new friendships or maintaining old ones? This is a great question because actually now I'm in the process of doing both, and I can see the advantages and disadvantages of both of them. For example, I can maintain my old friends from the UK, but by maintaining them, I'm also maintaining some possibly unhealthy habits such as partying and whatnot. Whereas new friends I've made in the last 10 years, I've tried to make new friends who are a little bit more kind of ambitious, a little bit more healthy, who have similar values to myself that I've developed over the last 10 years, such as, eating healthy, participating in sport, learning, and all the rest. So I guess there's advantages to both. I don't want to lose my old friends, because just one advantage of those is that they're the ones who always put me down, and I can always rely on them to tease, to take the mickey out of me and bring me back down to reality. Whereas my new friends, they've got more healthy attributes. So I can't really say which is more important, to be honest. I guess it depends where you are in your life and what your goals are. So yeah, that would have to be my answer to that question. I really had to stop myself there from talking. I could talk about this for a long time, but I pretty much answered the question numerous times, and I didn't want to keep waffling because I think it would hurt your confidence if the examiner cuts you off. So I just cut myself off by rephrasing the question and left it at that. Again, I'm weaseling out of the question by saying it depends, but as I said before, I'm not a psychology expert. The examiner doesn't really want to know my views about friendships. He wants to know how good can I express my opinion and my views. And by talking about personal experiences and giving real world answers, I think I've definitely satisfied his desire to know my English ability. Okay, final question. How do companies welcome their new employees in your country? To be honest, this is quite difficult because I haven't lived in my country, which is England, for over 15 years now. And however, the last jobs I had when I was in England were student jobs working in a bar. And I basically got greeted by the fastest training you'll have ever heard, you'll have ever seen. It was basically, okay, here are the beer kegs. Ask for ID if they look under 18. This is how you operate the till. And there was basically no introductions or no welcoming. But I guess if it's a more formal job, maybe there's a procedure. It's a really difficult question to answer, to be honest. I have seen in some series that the worker gets basically taken around the whole department, and they'll say something like, oh, here is Ben, he's our new accounting expert, and this is Dave, he works in marketing, and so on and so forth. But to be honest, my knowledge on this is strictly related to what I've seen in TV, apart from the informal jobs I had in my country when I was a student. So I'm sorry, I can't really answer that to the full ability that I'd like to. So I think this was a really good answer, if I do say so myself, because we are going to be faced by questions that we cannot answer. And again, this examiner who asked this has zero interest about new employees in your country. Zero interest. They want to know how you can answer that question. And just being honest, like I did, I gave look, hey, I haven't lived in England for over 15 years. And when I did, I didn't have a formal job. I had a student job. So, hey, I can't really answer this. So I'm going to tell you what I've seen on television, what I've seen in the series. It's not the specific answer that you wanted, but it's an answer, and you get to hear my English ability. So you are going to be happy. And he would be happy, or she would be happy. So don't worry about it. There we go. That's it for today. If you've got any questions, please get in contact. Remember, we've got a speaking feedback service, which Daphne is running. We give you a cue card to answer. You send us in a recording, and then we give you feedback. And then depending on your answer, we will give you exercises related to that. So, for example, if your pronunciation needs improving, we'll give you some exercises to improve your pronunciation and another cue card, and it works like that. And that's a very, very effective way to improve. So if you're struggling with your speaking, please get in contact. You can email us at ben@IELTSPodcast.com. We do respond, and we're getting a lot of great results, not only from the speaking feedback service, but also from the online IELTS course, Jump to Band 7 or it's free. And that's everything from me today. Keep working, keep moving forward. You will get the exam. You just need to put in the practice and don't give in. So have a fantastic day and all the best.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.
In this tutorial, we're going to be talking with Sarah. Sarah's from Bolivia, and she's now living in the States.
I'm from Honduras.
Oh, Honduras, for a great start. I always mix up the names of the country.
I didn't want to interrupt, but I was like, no.
No, go for it.
I
please.
cannot let it pass.